David Pearson moving down through as they come to the stripe. Here they come to the stripe.
They nearly touch here on the main straightaway. They come to the stripe.
Banging for second to the stripe.
They will come across the yellow line.
They touch at the stripe.
Have you ever?
No, I've never.
Wow.
When is a battle for the win more than simply another great NASCAR finish? When it stops time. When the fastest of moments manages to remain burned in our memories for a lifetime.
Hale's in the grass. Hale loses it. Earnhardt gets him.
Gordon got loose in Torben.
NASCAR races cover hundreds of miles, 43 drivers turning hundreds of laps. And why do we watch? Because it all builds to that one great instant, that one priceless moment when rivals find themselves barreling door to door toward the finish line.
You're going to be side by side as they exit the bank and head for the finish line.
They are dead even coming down to the line. This is going to be close. What a headline this is going to make.
Welcome to a collection of greatest NASCAR finishes.
Spins in turn
3. Labor Day weekend, 1997. For the 48th consecutive year, NASCAR's top series spent the waning moments of summer dancing with the lady in black, the Darlington Raceway.
There are certain guys that understand that racetrack. They know that it's going to be slick, they're going to be sliding around, and you've got to be a man's man to race at Darlington.
They don't make how many competitors out there. You just put them by your picture and drive that racetrack.
It's not only is the track too tough to tame, but it's a place right there that everybody has got to have the ability to get up on that wheel.
But the lady had never seen a driver quite like Jeff Gordon, already two-time Southern 500 winner. On the line for Gordon, the Winston Million. But standing in the way was an upstart title contender, Virginian Jeff Burton.
They come down for the white flag, this time by one more lap around. Burton goes to the inside. They touch, they bump, they head for turn number one, trading sheet metal.
He got inside me, coming to take the white flag off of 4. And, I just wasn't ready to give it up.
He just turned left and ran me down the racetrack. Well, I was doing my best not to make contact because we were so much faster. I didn't want to hit him. I didn't need to hit him.
Sparks fly side by side coming into the corner, but Gordon drives in faster. He still hangs on to the top spot, but Burton is there off turn 2.
I think he recognized, rather than crashing both of us, that it's probably better to give me some room and gave me just enough room to make it back around and win the race.
Jeff Burton will make a challenge off the corner onto the straightaway.
Yeah, we did!
But Jeff Gordon wins it.
You have to give Jeff Burton a lot of credit. He could have taken Gordon out. Certainly he wanted to win the Southern 500, but he wanted to do it fair and square and not take somebody out to do it.
I think Burton, if he had a second chance and could do it all over again, would have run him a little bit more dirty than what he did that day.
Well, I think if I'm Jeff Burton, I still spin him out. I mean, he blocked Jeff all the way down below the apron on the front straightaway. So I got to get in the side of him, at least send him across the apron where he's got to slow down to make the corner.
I had a lot of people really upset that I didn't wreck him. I mean, I'm just going to tell you, for 2 years I heard, you should have wrecked Jeff, you should have wrecked. To this day, that hadn't stopped.
I think by far that was probably one of the best races as a team I've ever been involved in, when the driver gave everything he had, the crew gave everything that they had, and I mean, I used every trick in the book that I had. That was a day we walked out of there with $1 million, and we earned it.
One thing that showed me was the same Jeff Gordon that I saw back when he was coming up through the midgets. He was and is, for all of the image and all of the polish and all of the rest of that, when the money's on the line, kid's a racer.
Burton would finally get his elusive Southern 500 victory 2 years later. But that career milestone was overshadowed by the earth-shaking events that had transpired 1 week earlier in a place known simply as Thunder Valley, USA.
Everybody feels it when you go to Bristol, and then when you turn the lights on, it just seems like it's a whole different place.
Bristol, Tennessee. 2 champions, 2 winless streaks. Something had to give.
Terry Labonte nosing to the inside of Dale Earnhardt, side by side down the front stretch. Terry Labonte noses to the point in turn 1.
Daddy hadn't won a race in a while. He was pretty hungry for a win. He was going to do whatever it took to go down in that corner and move Terry out of the way.
Oh, and Earnhardt spins him out.
I didn't know whether to say on the air blatantly that Dale Earnhardt has just wrecked Terry Labonte or whether I should be a little more subdued.
We're old school race people. That's the way we grew up racing. We grew up on the short tracks and grew up racing tough, and that's the way Dale was brought up.
Robin's racing, right? Whether he did it on purpose or not, Mr. Earnhardt knows that answer.
Even though I'm a Dale Earnhardt fan, I have to say it. Dale Earnhardt just spun Terry out. Terry wrecked. Dale Earnhardt came around him, and Dale Earnhardt won the race.
I don't think he meant to spin him. I think he just meant to just get him out the way a little bit. Earnhardt was always good for that.
Terry got into me in the middle of 3 and 4, and I was going to get back to him and just rattle him. I wasn't going to wreck him.
To see the Earnhardt car on the track with that 3 on the side after winning a race and hearing people boo, it was an eerie feeling.
He didn't think about the fans when he was trying to win a race. Whatever it took to win the race, he did the job, and then worried about the fans later.
He was the intimidator, and that's what he did. Maybe it wasn't as blatant at times as it was at that time at Bristol.
I talked to him about it, and he said, I invited Terry to go hunting with us the next year, with Childress, and we're going hunting, and Terry said, only if I can walk behind you.
It was classic Earnhardt, and if you listen to Terry Labonte's response afterwards, he even said it was classic Earnhardt.
He's made some look like racing accidents. That wasn't one of them.
Dale Earnhardt's stirring career comeback that began in 1999 ended tragically at the outset of 2001. His death at Daytona created a void in the sport that many believe will never be filled. Kevin Harvick was not supposed to be in NASCAR's top series, not yet anyway, but car owner Richard Childress put the 25-year-old in what many called an impossible position, replacing the Intimidator.
When RCR announced that Kevin Harvick would be the guy to replace Dale Earnhardt, there was a lot of people that thought, what?
Kevin had a tremendous amount of pressure on him because he'd come from the Busch Series, and they just threw him in it. Like, here you go do it.
The car was white. The number had been changed. But on the high-speed high banks of the Atlanta Motor Speedway, Earnhardt's little-known replacement did his part to start the healing.
White flag right here, 1 lap to go. Get up off your seats.
As a competitor, you do all you can to win the race.
Gordon's going to make the big move on the inside when they get down here to turn 3.
If I had to do it over again, I would have made a different decision. I would have went to the bottom of the racetrack and not left the bottom of the racetrack open like I did, because I really didn't expect Jeff to close in as fast as he did.
Gordon is down low. Harvick is up high, side by side out of 4.
All of a sudden, here I come up off of 4, side by side with him with a shot at winning.
He's going to get him, though. He's going to get him. Gordon got loose. It's Harvick. Harvick.
We definitely were able to make the right moves at the right time to get ourselves whatever the distance was there at the end, about that much.
If the start-finish line had been down the track another 10 foot, Jeff wins, and that's what NASCAR racing is all about.
For Harvick to be able to come in, eliminate that pressure, block it all out, and just go race, awesome, just an awesome finish. And if you had a heartbeat, you were fired up about that.
Kevin Harvick pulled off one of the all-time upsets in NASCAR history.
Harvick's victory was by 6 1/1000ths of a second. And race fans around the world needed a moment to gather their emotions.
It didn't seem to matter on that day whether you were an Earnhardt fan or you weren't an Earnhardt fan. Everybody, I don't think there was a dry eye in the house at Atlanta.
To
see the reaction of the crowd and the fans and driving around on a pace lap and the emotion that was coming out of everybody. I mean, it wasn't just our team, it was the race fans, the pit crews, and you'd really just, it's hard to explain.
The whole thing was just like a storybook. We knew that we were doing the way Dale would want us to do it, you know, that's what he'd want us to do.
To look around and see the emotion on Richard's face and everybody's face that was a part of that has been a part of Richard Childress Race for so many years, it actually took me, and sometimes right to this day, I have a tough time watching that video.
It was like it was meant to be, and it was something that the fans needed, we needed, I needed personally. I think it was just something that I'll just never forget it because it was so emotional, and I never will looking up in the sky and saying, thank you, buddy.
From the 1960s through the 80s, Bobby Allison and Richard Petty battled on NASCAR bull rings across America. Now it was their kids' turn. And in the 1992 Winston All-Star event at Charlotte, hot night.
I remember when they said they were going to put lights up at a big racetrack, you know, no one believed them that they could actually light up a 1.5 mile racetrack.
Everybody said, yeah, sure you can, and you can jump over the moon too. And I was a skeptic like everybody else.
When the switch was thrown, what track promoters had long promised became a high-voltage reality.
It was one of those deals that when you came in, the crowd, you could feel the energy in the air.
White flag, 1 lap to go.
He's going to get a shot at him.
Kyle Petty is there.
You know Davey Allison's not going to win the race with those two guys up in front of him, and Kyle's not going to win it because Earnhardt's going to block him.
I got under Dale coming out of turn 2, coming down the backstretch, and he just kept coming.
And when they got to the corner, Kyle wasn't going to let off, and Dale knew that.
Now they touch. Earnhardt's car spins in turn number 3. Kyle Petty goes by as Earnhardt spins up to the outside of the track.
To sit there and witness this guy that you think is the greatest of all time sit there and go down into turn 3 on the bottom wide open, spin out. That was hard to watch. You know, your hero fail.
I had to check up, not knowing where he was going. I gave Davey plenty of room coming out of turn 4 because he was coming.
Well, when I looked off turn 4 and I'm seeing the 28 and the 42 side by side, I'm thinking, what in the world happened over there?
They managed to not quite wreck until they got between the 4th turn and the finish line.
He turned down to hold me as tight as he possibly could, and I clipped the grass coming out of turn 4.
Davey Allison on the inside of Kyle Petty. They touch here at the stripe. Allison wins. Allison hard into the outside wall.
You know, there was all this crashing. There goes Davey, there goes Kyle. Everybody's going, what happened? What happened? There was a lot of, did you see that? Can you believe that?
When you left on that Saturday night, you felt like you had driven that race.
Everybody was so concerned about Davey because, I mean, he crashed hard. I mean, really, really hard.
Well, I remember the whole race all the way up till we crossed the finish line and the two cars touched and we spun the wrong way. And then the lights went out.
I hate it ended the way it ended, with 2 cars torn up and 1 driver headed to the hospital. That was a bad deal.
The tough part about that night is that Davey had to be pulled out of his car and taken to local hospital because he was rattled pretty good at the end, so the winner didn't even get to go to victory lane.
That's just the way it goes in racing sometimes. Sometimes everything goes your way and sometimes the little things don't. And sometimes those little things turn out to be big things. In this case, it was a big bang.
1 week after his injuries in the 1992 All-Star event, Davey Allison was back, and throughout that long, hot summer, the driver of the number 28 was embroiled in the greatest championship battle in NASCAR history.
That final race in Atlanta, 1992, certainly was a major event in a lot of people's lives, a lot of people's careers.
The King is going to make his last lap, and Jeff Gordon's going to make his debut, and all this fantastic stuff is happening.
There were a lot of guys in contention for the title, but everybody knew it was probably going to come down to 3.
Allison, Bill Elliott, and Wisconsin's Alan Kulwicki entered the season's final event virtually deadlocked for the point lead.
There is Davey Allison and Alan Kulwicki.
So this is 1-2. Kulwicki second in the Winston Cup standings. Davey Allison leading.
We were sitting there running about 6th or 7th. And that's when Ernie Irvin, driving the 4 car, blew a tire coming off turn 4.
Irvin is sideways. He tags Labonte. He'll come onto the inside retaining wall and collect Davey Allison.
With Allison's car out of contention, Elliott and Kulwicki frantically swapped the lead while their crews frantically crunched numbers.
We wind down 5 bonus points for leading 1 lap, 5 extra points for leading the most laps.
Alan Kulwicki had to lead the most laps in the race to win the championship. It was so close. Point standing was just back and forth, all day, back and forth. And, Bill done what he done as good as he could do. He wound up winning the race.
Bill Elliott comes off the 4th corner. He wins the Hooters 500.
Georgia's Elliott won the battle, but Kulwicki, after leading only 1 lap more, won the war.
Alan Kulwicki, smart, ever the engineer, engineered it to where he would lead 1 more lap, got those 5 extra bonus points for leading the most laps, and won the thing. Absolutely phenomenal.
Everybody loved Kulwicki, and everybody wanted to see the underdog do good, and he did.
It was hard to walk up to him and kid around with him because he was always so tunnel visioned into what he was trying to accomplish.
It definitely, I think, gave us a shot in the arm of what one man can accomplish when you believe in yourself, you have a dream, and you're able to follow through on it.
Maybe it'll help some of the people that are dreaming about doing this to believe in themselves, and if I can do it, maybe they can too.
Sometimes you just got to have the most heart and use what you got to its maximum, and that's what Alan Kulwicki was so good at.
This is just the dream of a lifetime.
Only 10 points separated Kulwicki and Elliott in the final standings. Close, but certainly not the closest NASCAR battle. Talladega 1981. Ron Bouchard's only career win comes the hardest way possible, by a hair-thin margin over NASCAR champions Darrell Waltrip and Terry Labonte. Pocono 1986. Ricky Rudd and Jeff Bodine. Meet Tim Richmond.
There's a dead heat down the line. Here comes Ricky Rudd drafting down to the inside, and Rudd will go for the win, but he'll miss it by a foot, and Richmond will win the race.
Michigan 1991. Jarrett versus Allison, a second-generation showdown ending in Dale Jarrett's first career victory. Talladega 1993. NASCAR's new electronic timing and scoring system is put to the ultimate test. Compliments of Mr. Earnhardt.
Irvin goes to the low side of the racetrack. Earnhardt force high. Here they come to the stripe. It's going to be a dead heat at the line. Earnhardt by about 2 inches.
Never has NASCAR's timing and scoring skill been tested quite like it was at Darlington on March 18th, 2003.
3 laps to go. Can Ricky Craven make it happen? Kurt Busch is in command, but Craven now right up on the bumper, and here across the line starts looking to the inside for the lead.
Here are 2 guys. Kurt, relatively young in the sport, had already been to victory lane the previous season.
Ricky Craven was considered an okay guy, and he had won a race, but he was just sort of a mild-mannered, no dynamic presence driver.
There's no way Ricky Craven's going to catch him. Well, he kept reeling him in and reeling him in.
Side by side, 2 laps to go. Somebody's got to give, getting into turn 1. Nobody. And in the wall goes Busch.
I got a piece of Kurt on the way by going into turn 1. He got a piece of the wall.
And I didn't really think that was nice of him. I thought he should have backed out a little bit. So I went in the middle of turn 2 and jacked him up.
Busch brushes the wall. They bounce off each other. Craven has the lead. Busch bumps him. Craven to the outside and Busch back underneath, regains the top spot.
You'll do things at Darlington that you won't do anywhere else, because that is a racetrack that every driver that's ever been in a stock car is worth his salt. He wants to win at that race.
It's kind of like, who has the guts? It's not necessarily so much no guts, no glory, but it's a situation where these guys are putting it all on the line.
They both wanted that win so bad, they didn't care if their cars were destroyed at the end of the race, as long as they got to the finish line first.
I was just looking, I couldn't believe it. I said, man, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen.
And it was pretty clear to me that we're going to have one more shot at this thing. And it's going to have to be off of turn 4.
With my power steering that had failed about 10 laps earlier,
It was so hard to turn the car through 3 and 4 that he just chewed up all of my lead again.
Here comes Craven up top. Busch goes up the block. Here comes Craven down to the bottom, trying to hang on. Both cars are loose in 4.
The last lap coming off turn 4 really wasn't about passing him. It was about beating him to the start-finish line.
It's going to be a drag race. Wow! They touch! Craven got him!
We could race for another 20 years, another 30 years, and not even come close to having a finish that way.
Those two guys wanted, one of them wanted it worse than the other, and they were willing to wreck each other to get it.
Anybody that's a part of something like that, win or lose, you are so excited about just how thrilling it was.
As much contact as it was a clean race, which made it all the better. And Kurt Busch went to victory lane and congratulated Ricky Craven on that win, which was, a pretty cool thing.
You can close your eyes and you can watch that finish at Darlington over and over again. And the finish isn't going to change, the result isn't going to change, but it's going to be just as beautiful to watch.
When the brake dust settled, the final margin was 2 1/1000ths of a second, the closest finish ever recorded in NASCAR racing.
It was great. I had so much fun racing. Every time I tell the story, I think I'm going to win it, but I never do.
It seems like it's taken a while for me to enjoy what that race created. It was nice to capture a little bit of history.
One of the most bitter rivalries of the 1980s was a decade-long standoff between two of the sport's most bullheaded racers.
They were like heavyweight boxers. It was like Joe Frazier versus Muhammad Ali.
Whenever these two were racing for a win, it was noteworthy. But their 1986 showdown at Richmond became simply notorious.
That track could almost fit into this room. I mean, it was your prototypical bull ring.
That was our cup of tea. Short track racing, beating, banging, pushing, shoving, and best man win.
It was the second race of the season and the first salvo in a battle that would last all year long.
You could almost sense it was going to happen. They were racing so hard.
When the beating and banging started, it lasted somewhere between the neighborhood of 3 and 5 laps. Earnhardt will make him work for every inch of real estate. There's going to be some red, yellow, blue, all colors of paint between those two before this one is over as they go back into turn number 1.
He'd get out wide. Here comes Darrell on the inside. He's chopping across his nose. Every time he tried to get off of him, get under him, come off the corner, Dale would chop across his nose.
You knew it was going to be a battle down to the end because they were both so hard-headed and didn't want to give an inch.
He's down there. Earnhardt cuts him off.
Well, it come down to 3 laps to go, and I told Darrell, I said, on the last lap, you pass him down the backstretch.
Junior comes on the radio and he says, Darrell, you need to pass him, but 3 to go.
Darrell, being the driver he was, being the good, obedient servant, he says, in 4.
I drop left sides in the dirt. The car bounces up the track, slams into the side of Dale, and he goes up the hill, and I go by.
Waltrip will win the track race to turn 3. Earnhardt gets him. Hard into the wall goes Waltrip. Hard goes Earnhardt.
It's an old dirt track move. Gave me one of those shots in the right rear, and when he did, I mean, my car just took a hard right.
These two Turks, they were young and ambitious. Anybody tells you racing not a contact sport, just don't go to them.
I couldn't believe how bad they tore the cars up. They both drove into the fence. It's a short track. Heck, they can't be going 90 miles an hour, but it wadded them cars up.
Smoke, dust, dirt, grass, weeds, parts, the debris field was large. And I'll be darned if Kyle Petty wasn't a half a lap behind and he come motoring by, like, oh, I bet that was bad. That looked pretty serious.
That was bad for them, but it was good for us. Kyle picked his way through it, and he come back, the only one that came back.
And all of a sudden, Eddie said, wait a minute, they've got us at the top of the board. And I said, you're kidding.
Checkered flag is coming out. Kyle Petty has won it.
It's just like any race you win, it doesn't make any difference. When the race is over, you won it. Whether you was upside down, sideways, or blown tires, or blown motor, or whatever.
You lose a lot more that way than you ever win that way. So to win your first off of somebody else's misfortune, I didn't really care. I was 25 or 26. It was my first win, so I was excited.
Waltrip was involved in more wild finishes than any NASCAR driver of the last 30 seasons. Martinsville, 1987, DW's interpretation of the bump and run.
Labonte gets hit into Earnhardt. Waltrip will come down low. He's going to win.
And in the 1989 All-Star race, the bumper once again became the bumpy.
They touch. Waltrip is sideways. Wallace drives through. Waltrip spinning to the infield grass.
Not to be outdone, Waltrip's old rival also racked up his fair share of wild finishes from North Wilkesboro in 1989.
They get together in the middle of the corner. They spin. They go into the outside wall. Earnhardt hits the wall. Rudd hits the wall.
To Talladega in 1993.
As Wallace spins, Wallace's car goes on its nose. It barrel rolls 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times.
To Bristol, Tennessee in the summer of 95.
Labonte goes around. Dale Earnhardt now watches, but Labonte spun across the line and got the win.
Even the Hall of Fame win totals of Waltrip and Earnhardt pale in comparison to that of his royal fastness, the King, Richard Petty. Independence Day. The President of the United States coming from Washington to attend.
We were up in the radio booth. We were told to expect a call from President Reagan and that we were to put it live on the air.
Gentlemen, start your engines.
There are a lot of places the man could have been that day. He said, I'm going to Daytona. I'm going to watch that race.
And two of the greatest single names in the history of motorsports, putting on one of the grandest shows of all time.
For it to come down to a battle of icons, Richard Petty, who is still today the ultimate competitor. Cale Yarborough had great success at Daytona and Talladega.
Petty has a lot of racetrack, and he can use it up, and he can make Cale Yarborough live hard if he so elects.
He wasn't going to pass. He's going to stay right there because, you know, he was going to do the slingshot down the backstretch the last lap.
I had tested him. I knew how far I needed to be behind him going into turn one and where I needed to be coming off of turn two.
Just as we started past the start-finish line with a couple laps to go, you seen the car going way up in there.
And when the caution flag came out, I was right on his bumper. I didn't have my right distance behind him to make the slingshot work.
This will be the race back to the start-finish line, and this could be for all the marbles in the Firecracker 400.
Not having been able to do the slingshot like I wanted, I was a little bit out of position when I got to the third turn and washed up higher on the racetrack than I would have.
I wasn't running fast enough then to even think I had him cleared, so we got hung right in the middle of the corner side by side. And just bam, bam, bam.
They are door to door in the dog leg. They touch coming to the tri-oval down to the line. It is, I can't call that one. It is so close. I couldn't call it. I really couldn't. It was so close from the angle that I looked at it, I really couldn't tell.
When we came through the dog leg, I was on the inside, and my car rolled a shorter distance than his did.
I always wished that I had that race to run over again, and I think I'd have been a little bit harder to get by than I was.
It's Richard Petty by a foot. Petty wins his 200th career NASCAR victory.
That number 200 is a magical number. You know, like Babe Ruth's 714 home runs or Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak. It's just numbers that stick out in your head.
There's a reason that Richard Petty is called the King, and 200 wins, that was great. And to have the president there, the whole thing, it was just perfect.
Ronald Reagan came out and talked about the race a little bit. I think that's the part from my father that made it such a huge moment.
I understand that no one in the whole history of racing has ever done that or ever won 200 races.
It was the only time a county commissioner had ever upstaged president of the United States. Richard was county commissioner in Randolph County, North Carolina.
It was one of those deals where he got us on the front page and we got him in the sports page, so it worked out good for both of us.
No single facility in all of stock car racing has hosted more incredible, historic, and groundbreaking moments than the Daytona International Speedway.
Daytona represents a bit of a tabernacle or a very sanctimonious place that's almost hallowed ground.
For the first time, the Daytona 500 would be carried live, flag to flag, on national television.
The 79 Daytona 500 was epic, and there was a storm on the East Coast, so everybody was socked in their houses.
New fans that had never watched an auto race turned it on just to see what the big hubbub was.
Lucky for us all, Cale Yarborough and the Allison brothers were prepared to provide some action.
Donnie Allison is still out front. Cale Yarborough tucked in on his bumper. When will Yarborough make his move? They flash across the stripe and white flag for Donnie Allison.
Saw him actually starting down a little bit, and all I could say to myself was, I'm not going to let you under me down the back straightaway.
I love to do that slingshot move. You know, it's kind of a daring move to wait to the last lap, but, you know, I figured I had him set up.
If you knew Cale Yarborough, if you were going to beat Cale, it's kind of like taking a pork chop away from a pit bull.
Where will Cale make his move? He comes to the inside. Donnie Allison throws the block. Cale hits him. He slides. Donnie Allison slides. They hit again. They drive into the turn. They're hitting the wall.
The windows and everything is so big in them cars, you can see Cale in there driving, his hands flying around as he's driving that thing through the mud.
I mean, those two guys beating on each other and pushing each other around, that was serious, serious stock car racing.
Caution is on the racetrack, and it will be a battle back to the start-finish line.
Here comes Richard Petty. He leads Darrell Walter by 5 car lengths.
You get down there and you look off and you see, man, that's Donnie and Cale down there. Man, that's Donnie and Cale, and they were leading the race, and all of a sudden you're fighting for the win.
That was number 1 and number 2 laying in the infield. And, you know, I done all I could do to stay in front of Darrell. I think I cut him off a little bit coming off the 4.
Here they come. Waltrip trying to slingshot. Petty is out in front at the line. Waltrip to the inside. Petty wins it.
Richard wins the race. That storyline alone is enough to really catch the consciousness of the country. But then it gets better.
We ended up in the infield, and it was a couple unpleasant words between Cale and myself, and pretty well was over with.
Of course, here come Bobby driving up, and so I figured it was going to be a double teaming, so.
He yelled at me that the wreck was my fault. I think I probably questioned his ancestry.
There's a fight. The tempers overflowing. They're angry. They know they have lost. And what a bitter defeat.
Bobby and Donnie and I both were friends before that race started, and the next day we were friends again.
Richard Petty won that race that day, and he's talked about less than I am. Less than Cale is, less than Bobby is for that given day. And that's pretty unique when you win a Daytona 500 and you're not talked about as much as somebody else that didn't win it.
Richard Petty and David Pearson finished 1-2 a startling 63 times in their storied racing rivalry.
Petty and Pearson were arguably the two biggest names that we had in stock car racing at the time.
Each one of them was the type person that you felt like if you beat him, you beat the best.
On February 15th, 1976, the King and the Silver Fox took their rivalry and the entire sport to a level never before seen.
Coming down to the line, Richard Petty continues to venture higher and higher up on the banks. David Pearson staying right with him, and Pearson is again closing as they go into turn number 1.
We had been back and forth, you know, all during the race and trying to figure out where to pass and all that stuff.
I was leading the race, and David wouldn't go around me. I knew what was going on, and I knew he was going to, you know, slingshot by me.
They took care of each other until it was a white flag. And the white flag meant the taking care of each other's over. The race is on now. The war is on.
And it was just intense, and it just kept building to the crescendo that you saw.
Pearson moves in front of the SCT Dodge. Petty comes back to the inside. They almost touch as they move down low in the banking. You're going to be side by side as they exit the bank and head for the finish line.
And just quick as I went into 3, I drifted up, and he had so much more power than I did. He just cut right back down and come right on back around me.
The reason I moved up was so that he didn't have another chance to run at me. You know, I mean, naturally block the track, but I liked about this much clearing him.
Richard Petty goes back in front. They both spin. They're in the wall. Petty is slamming into the wall. He's coming down toward the finish line. Will he make it? When they came off that final turn and they got into each other, it's like, oh my God! And you could see them. They were spinning, and dirt was flying everywhere.
You know, I slid some, and I didn't slide quite far enough.
He's still moving. The car stops 300, 400 feet shy of the finish line. Pearson is still running.
Really didn't know where he was at. And of course they said that, of course I was on the radio hollering, where's Richard, you know.
He had about 5 things going on. Number 1, he was knocking it out of gear, keep it running, plus driving it with it backwards. Plus, he called me and asked me where Richard was.
Anytime you spin, always push your clutch in and make sure you don't run the motor backwards. I did that and kept it going.
Here's Petty trying to fire to come across the line. David Pearson moving down through as they come to the stripe. The winner is car number 21.
That was the sport in a microcosm. Two guys who respected, liked each other, and so on, battling for supremacy.
If David had wanted to beat somebody and finish like that and win a Daytona 500, he couldn't have picked a more competitive driver that he had raced with for all those years than Richard Petty.
They didn't get out fighting. They were both going for the win.
Nobody wrecked anybody on purpose. Nobody got out and pointed fingers at each other.
I never blamed him, and I don't think he blamed me because he won the race, so it didn't make any difference.
We had run 1 and 2 so many times, you know, and for it to come down between me and him, which I was glad it was him. That was real special to me.
So there you have it. Another reason why we love the most competitive racing in the world. The end result that time and time again proves to be something magical, something memorable, something great.
Terry Labonte takes the lead. Here comes Earnhardt. He hits Labonte. Labonte spins in turn 2.
Jeff Gordon holds off a last lap charge by Jeff Burton and wins the Winston Million.
Here comes Davey Allison to the bottom. It'll be the finish everybody was waiting for. They crash past the finish line.
He's going to get him, though. Here they come. Get him. Gordon got loose in Harvick. Harvick wins. Harvick by inches. What a race.
They are dead even coming down to the line. This is going to be close. They lean on one another. Across the line, Ricky Craven gets the win.